Hey there. So for this first homework, we are going to be drawing this still life, okay, that you should print out, and I'd suggest taping it on a vertical surface, so like maybe a wall, um, a table. Um, I don't recommend drawing completely face down because your perspective of the drawing changes, but if you have an easel that you can prop this up on, that would be actually very helpful, but we'll work with what we can. Um, so what you're going to need for this is obviously your paper. I am also using an 18 by 24 pad, just like you have. Um, you need your kneaded eraser, and I have hard charcoal and soft charcoal. So soft charcoal is usually thinner. It's going to be more dark, while your hard charcoal is more soft. It's going to be pretty light. And then if you have a charcoal pencil, that would also be pretty convenient to have. It's not necessary, but it could be really useful for details. Anyways, so starting out, we first need to know where exactly on the page our still life is going to be at. This is where composition comes in. We'll talk about that more like later on, but to kind of understand where our still life is going to be at, I'm just going to draw a circle. Okay, so this is kind of where I want my still life to be at. So here would be like the top of the bottle. Here will probably be like the side of the wine glass. This might be the bottom. Okay, so now we kind of established where our things are going to be at. The next thing to do is we're going to be kind of putting circles on where our objects are going to be at. We have 4 objects here. We have a bottle, a jar, book, and a wine glass. So it's pretty basic. For starters, let's see. So our wine glass starts pretty high up here. So I'm just going to put it, it's probably going to be somewhere around here. Okay. Then our bottle is going to start a little higher, obviously. What I like to do is I like to connect the objects. So here, let me demonstrate that closer. Okay, so I like to find the angle between the top part and the wine glass, okay, and then follow that angle. I'll show you exactly what I mean. Okay, so I'd be like, okay, here's the angle it needs to be at, so I'm gonna imitate that. And there you go, there's the angle. So now I know that this edge here, okay, is at this angle to the top of the bottle. This is very convenient for when you need to make things look accurate, right? This especially comes in handy for portraits, which we won't touch for now. So we have now the wine glass, the bottle. Let's see. Okay, so the distance between the bottle and the wine glass is about, let's see. It's almost like cut in thirds, which is kind of interesting. So let's see. If it's this thick, then it would need to be, so we're cutting it into thirds. It's about that size, right? Okay, so because if you measure here, here, and here, it's almost equal, not exactly, but it's close enough. Okay, so now we know our bottle is somewhere over here. We know that the bottle ends a little higher, so I'm just gonna like, okay, so now we got the bottle. We got the wine glass. This middle part is going to be pretty easy. Just kind of draw a circle there for now. Okay, now it's all sitting on a book. So let's see. When things are very geometric, so like squares and, like a book, using angles is going to be like essential, basically. So you follow the angle of the shadow, right? You have your angle. You can use whatever you're using. Some people also use a stick, like a longer stick to measure. It really doesn't matter too much. So we can tell that this edge ends about here. Okay, because I'm comparing it to the bottle. So, okay, there's still some space left in the bottle. Okay. And ends about here. So we need to measure what kind of distance this shadow part is. So I'm gonna see, compare it to, I mean, it's, I'd say it's more like, it's gonna be a little bit more than this part. So maybe about here, okay? Sometimes we have to guess, and that's fine. We can always go back and fix it. So the shadow is about at the same angle. Okay, now we're gonna color that in so we don't get confused, okay? Because we can get confused really easily with all these angles. So same thing here. We can already color it darker. Okay. Now we measure this angle. Let's see, about like that. Okay, and about like this. Alrighty. Our glass will end about here, just a little bit higher than this edge. Okay, so I feel like here. Alright, and the distance between the end and like where the glass part starts is about half, which is really nice, because all we can do is just pretty much just put the line in the middle, and that's about our glass size. So we know that here's going to be the base. Okay, that's our base. There are two angles on the wine glass. You can kind of see how they are. And this base right here is going to be the same width as the width of the glass. So okay, so if this is our base, it is going to go up like this. Okay. Kind of like that. Okay. When you can tell that the lines are getting a little too messy and if it gets confusing for you, you can always go back and like erase it. Okay, I'm gonna just redefine that. Okay, so now we got our wine glass. Okay, now we got this edge of the book. Again, let's measure it. You can tell that this needs to end a little after the wine glass. The angle's a little too high. Okay. You're gonna need to go back and fix your angles. Like, it's just not something you're gonna avoid. And that's fine, you know, like, make mistakes. Okay. So now we have our book shape defined. We can kind of go in. You can tell that, in fact, let's go and, no, we'll do that afterwards. So you can tell that this top half of the bottle is about the same size as this jar. So you could just take this, put it up here, mark it, and now you know. So you kind of like you can guess the size of the bottle, the top of it. It's not a big deal. Remember these angles. So. And don't worry, like, if it doesn't look right, it doesn't have to look right. Okay, this is a long process that you go through. We're doing this because it helps us understand form and shape, okay, values, perspective, everything, all the elements of art. Okay. So we have our bottle. Okay, now let's define the jar. Has like a circle in the middle. Well, it's all really dark, so I'm just going to color it that way. Now let's color in the dark parts. So let's start with the background. Okay, now you can take a towel, a paper towel. I'm going to use, you know what, I might just use my fingers, to be honest. No, I have a towel. I don't recommend using fingers, by the way. To kind of soften it out a bit. Okay. So now we can already take the soft charcoal, since we already have everything drawn out. And we can start defining the shapes a little bit more. Oh, let me mention this. So it looks like I'm outlining right now. I'm actually defining the shadow. So don't outline your things. Okay, they might look a little flat otherwise. So here we have this dark shadow on the bottle is pretty defined. So, okay, we're just going to color that in. Okay. Nice. Redefine it a little down here. There's a shadow that goes like that. And everything that's really dark, you can just do that basically. So see, it's kind of getting there. So we're just going to keep defining the really dark darks. Okay, that's what we're going to start with. Then we can do the midtones. Let's see, we have this really dark shape here. Okay, that we're going to put in. Then we have this edge over here. That's very dark. And color this circle in. Okay. So it's a slow buildup, but eventually you get what you want. Alrighty. Now you can take your towel again and very gently just smear it. You don't have to smear anything, by the way. I usually don't, but for the sake of blending, it's pretty nice. You can also blend the shadow into the light. Okay. Now I'm gonna add the dark darks in the background. I think that's pretty important. Because the background is pretty dark. Yeah, so blending also saves time because I don't want to take too long on this. So. I'm gonna use the leftover to kind of color in the middle. It's a little dark. Okay. Now I'm gonna go with the eraser and kind of erase where I need to have like really light lights, like on this wine glass, for instance. Okay. Look needed here. I think we're good on the bottle. Okay. So from now on, it's just more build up, if anything. I'm gonna go with my. Where to put it? There we go. So I'm just gonna go with my soft charcoal and go more into detail. At this point, this is basically the same thing. I'm gonna use a charcoal pencil, but it's the same thing as having one of these. Basically, you just define the edges. I say you can outline it just a little bit, and not outline it, but make like very light marks, just so you're able to tell where the glass is. So you can tell that it's a little darker, kind of closer to the middle of the glass than it is at the edge. Going to make sure we do that. So be sure to pay attention to the values, because here it's dark, but it's not as dark as it is in the middle. Okay, so I don't like smudging with my finger, but sometimes it's useful, especially when you need to soften your edges. Okay. So now we define the middle. Very light. Okay. So we can tell that this little shadow at the end extends to go up here. If you can see this little line. I know it's hard to see on here, but if you have your own photo, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. There's this little line here that goes up here and then toward the jar. Make sure I don't forget that that's there. Define the book shape more. So I'm redefining the edges because I think it's pretty important for you to see like why the angles matter the way they do. We see this shadow specifically as a hard edge, so we don't want to like smear that too much. But then it extends out into a soft one down here. Very hard here. Very hard edge. Okay. So with the wine glass, there's a little shadow here. Little shadow here. It's like it's very light, like on the left edge. Okay. And it's really light over here as well. And then there's a little edge over here that we can define. Okay. So another pretty important thing is that to make your objects not look like they're floating in space, to define the horizontal line. And I think we talked about this in class. I don't know, because it's tomorrow. You're going to want to define it. It's actually here in the back. Okay. Alrighty. I kind of see it's a little darker here. I think that might be the wine glass shadow. I'm not too sure. But I'm going to make it a little darker here just in case. And then we'll use our fingers quick. Okay, cool. Now let's move on. I'm gonna define this jar. Okay, it's definitely, there's almost like a line here of shadow. I'm just gonna put that down here too. Yeah, pay close attention to where the shadows are, because sometimes that's a shadow from like one of the objects, and that's really important to put down. So the top of the book here is going to be darker than this part, so yeah. Also, I guess you could do this in pencil. The only thing is that it's going to be a lot slower, because the pencil is so much thinner than like a whole block of charcoal. That's why, and also charcoal will be a lot darker as well, so you'll have stronger values. That's why I don't recommend using pencil too much. It'll come in handy though when, I guess when we're going to start portraits. Okay, so I can tell that this part over here is extremely dark. And it also has a sharp edge, so I'm going to define that. Okay. I don't want to make this too long. We're already at 30 minutes. Okay. So, define the edges. So you just keep working at the values. I know this seems a little boring to do, but when you have the grasp of this, like when you start with just pulling these still lifes like just back and forth, is when you're very confident in your skill. So you can apply that into many other things. Like no one sits here, right, and stops at this level. Okay, the only reason artists do this or start out with this is so they can progress into like more complicated things and not still lives. I mean, actual interesting artwork. Although, I mean, maybe some will stop here, but that's of their own accord. So, you can tell there's like shadow here and a shadow here, but this one's harder. Yeah, so don't worry about like everything being extremely smooth. Like that's not exactly that important. Like as long as you understand what you're doing, that's really all that matters. Like, alrighty. It's a little dark here. Well, looks almost done, to be honest. A little extra thing you can do, but that's not really necessary. If you have white charcoal, okay, some artists will use this to create highlights. You can also use your eraser. That's what you should first use your eraser, and then if it doesn't work, then go into it. But this is just for the highlights. See, in this case, eraser would work better. Yeah, I don't like using this table too much, but you know. Let's see. And I'll work well for this. This is also good for like adding these tones to the dark part. Or if you need to define these dark edges. I'm gonna add a little bit more of a soft edge here since it is a round glass. And if there's any like improvements you want to make to this personally, go ahead. I feel like there always needs to be some kind of freedom when it comes to making art. Okay. I'm gonna add maybe just a touch of a highlight here in the dark. There's one here too. Okay. I think we've covered it. Okay. So here it is. Okay. Pretty simple still life. Yours does not have to look like this. In fact, I don't expect it to. But when you're done with your drawing, I'm going to ask you to take a picture of it, okay, and send it to me so then we can discuss it in our next class. With any questions you might have, any concerns, things like that, we'll just look over your drawing and see what can be improved. But yeah, so take a picture of that, and don't forget your value scales. It's pretty important. And I'll see you next class.